Hello, my friend. Welcome to the study, where we can have some oasis of calm in the midst of a trying world, to give ourselves a little bit of peace and thereby some strength to be our best out there. Today, we're going to use the tusk of cards, and you have seen this deck before in the study. This is the 200th anniversary of Waterloo deck, which I thought appropriate not because of the content of the Waterloo, but because we're going to look at the painting of Jean-Louis René Meissonier, called A Game of Piquet, or Innocence and Card Sharps. And this deck has some beautiful paintings on it as well. Meissonier having used the Napoleonic campaigns as many of his subjects, as well as horses. So for this, I think we can have a little bit of spirit as well. And I've chosen this Spanish muscat, Muscat del Oro. This is a golden muscat in a beautiful bottle with some gold flowers on it. And pour a bit. The glass sounds nice. You know, it's got a little bit of lime scale on it, sorry about that. But that's the glacial area where I live. We'll put our muscat there, and as you can see, I've put on some reminiscent of 17th century Musketeers sleeves, just for this occasion. Not perfect, but it makes a very nice sound. Fabric there, and it gives us a bit of atmosphere. So as I take the cards out, I shall tell you about Meissonier. And then we shall play a hand or two of Piquet. Just you and me here in the study. Jean-Louis René Meissonier was a classicist painter. Although he was born in 1815, the year of Waterloo, of the Vienna Congress, and the end of the Napoleonic era, he's famous for his paintings on subjects of Napoleon Bonaparte's military campaigns, as well as other subjects of years and centuries predating those. Such as the campaigns of Napoleon III and the revolutions of 1830 and 1848. A legend in his own lifetime, Meissonier was the grandest, richest, and most expensive painter in France in his day. In fact, we can read in Guy de Maupassant's 1885 novel a story about the high society in Paris called Bel Ami, that the hero of the story says of a family that they are so rich and well known that they even owned a painting by Meissonier. Meissonier's mastery of fine detail and his use of what can be seen as a precursor to tonalism, where an artist uses tonal values, mainly blues, greens, greys, or brown mist, to dominate and to create an atmosphere in a particular work. Meissonier also used a great amount of minute detail, impressing the English artist of the 19th century, John Ruskin, with his ability to notice and depict the tiny as well as the great. He generally painted on a small scale, sometimes as a study or practice, before fitting detailed miniature subjects into his larger works. And by 1869, the wealthy painter built a full-scale railway outside his studio, solely for the purpose of studying the anatomy of galloping horses, so that he could put them in his paintings. And he was a great painter of horses and cavalry. And many of his rich paintings, while 19th century, are reminiscent of Dutch painters like Vermeer, Hals, and Rembrandt. With his earnings as an artist, Meissonier set himself up in a grand and elaborate house with two giant art studios, one with a glass ceiling for light. This world he built for himself. Along with his temperament, he once remarked, belonged quite to another age, his own words, he was a painter of history. He enjoyed and excelled at depicting scenes of chivalry, whether in Bonaparte's cavalry and army or in his contemporary setting. All against a backdrop of a pre-revolutionary and pre-industrial romanticized France. Background and landscape. Indeed, he was of the generation of a new Europe, a Europe rebuilding itself after the ravages of the Napoleonic Wars, looking inward on itself, recalling its own forgotten history in a distant past with a romantic, wistful eye, and often from the comfort of the salon. Meissonier's long career overlapped with that of Monet and the beginnings of Impressionism, which is perhaps why many critics saw Meissonier's works as romantic and dated. However, Meissonier's technical genius is undeniable, and both his subject matter and his own personal story remind us not to forget the past. Let's have a look at some of his beautiful, evocative paintings. We're going to be looking mainly at his painting titled A Game of Piquet, Innocents and Card Sharps. He seems to have liked depicting gentlemen at their games or at study. You might have noticed the Meissonier forming the banner on this channel as well. There are several paintings depicting chess and more of cards. Let's have a look at the beautiful clothing of the 17th century chevaliers or cavaliers. Meissonier seemed to enjoy the subject of card games, and his paintings depict players in their elaborate 17th century clothing, an era he has equated in his works to the game of Piquet. Indeed, Piquet is mentioned by his contemporary Alexandre Dumas in his Musketeers stories as being played by D'Artagnan and his friends, heroes of the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. One might well draw the conclusion that Meissonier was a fan of Dumas' Musketeer stories by the subjects in these card paintings, and would not be wrong, for he did paint a portrait of Dumas at his desk. Here we can see the elaborate detail of the musketeer in his doublet and tabard, silk sash, the lace at his collar and at his cuffs, the wrinkles in his leather gloves, the detail of his boots that could be turned up for riding and fencing, and turned down to a bucket shape while socializing at the tavern, just as we have a musketeer on a beautifully trotting horse. The velvety material of his duck trousers and silky doublet, his hair, moustaches, and the feather in his broad-brimmed hat, glistening in the sun. Even the leatherwork on his saddle is full of detail. This cavalier, again very colourful, in his red stockings, blue ribbons, and blue tassels hanging down, his tabard or fencing cloak thrown over his musket shoulder, and you can see his moustache, the buttons on his doublet, and you can even see his shadow cast on the golden dirt pathway, the beautiful light reflecting on the golden pink and buff wall behind him. Here we have some examples of musketeers from the English Civil War, and the elaborate clothing and accoutrements they had. Over their cotton shirt or doublet was worn their tabard. The musket was very long, so they had to take a musket rest with them, something to hold up the barrel. Along their side or around their belt there were powder flasks that hung over the doublet. They also carried a sword. This is an illustration of the colourful clothing worn by musketeers and arquebusiers. Let's look now at the innocents and the card sharpers, or the game of Piquet. Again, the detail that Meissonier employs in his paintings is just marvelous. And you can see here this background that's a very dull color on first glance. On closer inspection, there's a depth to these tones of blue-green, brown, black, and the taupe of the floor. In the back, you can just barely see a pattern on the wall in the shadow of this wooden structure. You can almost see the plaster, the bluey grey plaster behind them, and the foreground is very brightly lit, exposing all the colours of the clothing. And the remarkable detail in the clothing, such as the spurs, the shiny buttons and buckles, the silks, the sashes, and the metal of the bottle on the table, the shiny glasses, and the sword behind the back of the musketeer standing on the right. observer is focused on the table. So it looks like a group of gentlemen enjoying themselves, drinking and playing cards. But if we look at the details in the painting, we get much more of the story. The colors of the wood, the knots in the wood, the rustic table and bench have scratches and stains on them. And by contrast, the young gentlemen on the right, who are probably in the group of innocents being taken by the card shoppers on the left, are clean-shaven, colorfully dressed, with expensive lace. One of them has a beautiful, fluffy feather in his broad-brimmed hat. Their hair is long and flows onto the collar. One has red breeches. All of the boots appear to be well worn. And these two that are looking at the cards on the right seem to be smiling inwardly, thinking they might have a chance to win some money at this card game. In the background, there is a balding older man leaning over the table, looking on with very decided eyes. His motives unclear, and standing behind them on the far right, a musketeer with his leather tabard and his hand on his sword behind his back, at the ready. His bucket boots drawn up to his thighs. Either he's just come in, or he's ready for a fight. Which do you think it is? The gentlemen on the left, on the other side of the table, are not focusing on their cards. They're looking at the two young gentlemen on the other side. These men are a bit older, two behind them standing aloof. They all look a bit more experienced and as if they have an agenda. They all have whiskers, beards, mustaches. Their clothes are a little bit more worn, but no less fancy. And we can see by the glasses that almost all of them have had wine in them, but most have been emptied. So there's definitely something going on here beneath the surface. Let's play some Piquet. You'll notice I just refilled the pen so that I can use this Piquet score sheet. But this is a score sheet that I've made up. There are 6 hands in one partie, so this is only a piece of the score sheet, and it helps if you are scoring Piquet or playing with someone new who's not familiar with the scoring, or you just need a reminder muscat. If you'd like to go through the rules of Piquet here in the study, we're just going to play a few hands here to relax and listen to the nice card sounds. Try not to bend them, although there are cards, we can play with them if we want, can't we? We can do whatever we please, because this is the study. It's our place. Alright. So we'll have nice pen sounds. So we have Secret Scholar and My Friend. Look at that. Nice, quiet card game in the Gentleman's Club. So as Elder Hand, you can exchange first. And you've got 4 queens, which looks very nice. It's the only one. So that's your one. Not a great exchange, unfortunately, but you've got a very strong hand. And you get to look at the other 4. Which I don't get to look at, and I don't have a very strong hand. So I'm going to trade 4, because that's as many as I can trade. Oh, in fact, I can trade 5, which I will do. Let's go with that one. So I pick up these 4, and the last one there, and we have 2 mystery cards. So not a bad trade for me. These are always interesting hands when we play together, aren't they? Alright, so now the bidding. So you have a point of 4, and I have a point of 6. And a sequence, you have a sequence of 4, and I can't beat that. So that's yours. Do you have another sequence? also not be a repique because you've got 18 points, but I've already scored 6, so there will be no pique or repique. I hope you can see those. Right. So, start with your ace. That's 1 for you. And you can draw out my king, or you can keep winning. You know I must have kings, but you're not sure how many because you got the declaration. So I wasn't able to tell you that I have 3 kings. We have 2 mystery cards over there. So the smart thing, I think, is to draw out to see if I do have that king. And yes, I do. So that's 1 for me. 1 and 1. I have to keep track here because this is tricky playing both hands at once. You can assume that my point of 6 comes from spades, as it's the least amount in your hand. And you know I might have 2 cards above your queen, but it's on me at the moment, and I'm going to go with hearts. 2. And 3. Haven't got that queen yet. And let's keep going with our spades. 4. 5. 6. 7. I think it's not going well. 8. Let's give the queen away because I already know you have them. And 9. Now you might think that I'm out of clubs. Probably know I'm out of hearts. And 10. And so that is 1, 2, 3 for you, and 4 and 5 for taking the last trick. So that's 10 and 5. And you get plus 10 for taking the most tricks, so I've got a total of 26. And you have a total of 23. Very close. Shall we play some more? Why not? Let's see what those last 2 cards were. The King of Diamonds and the 9 of diamonds, which we kind of already knew because that king never turned up in that hand. But the trick is to, when you're playing 2 open hands like we are today, to remember what your opponent has and has not seen. So we will each know certain things, mostly through our declarations. Let's have some more card play and some nice sounds for you. confusion in the study. Wow, look at that. Alright. That one. I'll go with that one as well. Not bad at all. Look at that. That is an amazing run. Just missing the queen. Alright, so I've got a point of 5 and you've got a point of 7. And a sequence for 5 of 5, and I can't beat that. So that's a sequence of 5 plus 10, because it's more than 5. 5 or more, it's 15. And trios and carte. 9, nothing, 10 or above. And I have 3 aces and 3 queens. So that's 6 for me. No peek or repeek. And we'll start with 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. And you have 2. So we've got 12 plus 10 is 22, plus 6 is 28, and here we have 24. So quite close scoring. There's our 10. Try not to bend the cards. Suppose I could do a better job. There we go. imagine how with these big puffy sleeves and even the big jacket cuffs that these Meissonier card players wore, it would have been to just stick a card or two underneath. Now you as Elder Hand will do your cards first. Let's see. 3. Let's go for 5. Not bad at all, my friend. My goodness. I think you're going to take this mini partie because being Elder Hand, you now have an advantage to having a large point. You can fairly assume I have absolutely no spades. In fact, it's more than an assumption, isn't it? Let's get rid of these. Oh, that's a decent pickup. Look at that. So I'm assuming you have all the spades and very few clubs. Pen. So you have an unbeatable point of 8. And your sequence of 8, which is plus 10, because you've got 5 or more, gives you also a trio of queens. Can I beat that? No, because I have no spades. Oh, however, I have a trio of aces that will beat that. So the trio goes to me, which means there's going to be no pique or repique. And to the play, I've got to decide what 8 cards I can lose first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to you. And I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. What do I want to keep? Hardly matters. Yep. I'll go with 8. So 8 to you, my friend. And you have to put down a 9. 9. So that's 1 for me. 2. 3, 4, 5. is 19. So we have plus 10, and 35 is 45 whopping points for you, and a paltry 8 for me. So then these scores are added. Shall we do that? Although we haven't played 6 hands, so we won't be able to do the grand totals. But if you remember, what happens is if the loser has crossed the Rubicon or gets over 100, the winner scores 100 plus the difference of the two scores. And if the loser has not crossed the Rubicon, then the winner scores 100 plus the sum of the two scores, and the loser scores nothing. So there's our short mini party of Piquet. I hope you've enjoyed that. Let's have a look in on our Musketeer friends and their game. This painting by Meissonier in 1865 is oil on panel, called End of a Game of Cards, painted just 4 years after the game of Piquet that we saw earlier. Here we see 2 gentlemen, possibly of our previous Piquet party, looking as if they've just finished a duel. Cards lying strewn on the floor, blood soaking into the floorboards, a few gold coins visible near the blade in the foreground, one lying very pale and dead, with his head on an upturned chair, the other clasping at his gaping wound as he seems ready to expire. In the background, the setting in this painting is in fact Meissonier's own richly furnished studio from his grand house that he built from his earnings as an artist and painter. We can see playing with light and shadow, foreshortening as well, and minute detail in the buttons on the tabards, as well as the leather chair, the stonework on the fireplace, tapestries and painted wall in the background, and that buff taupe grey on the floor. So it has not gone well for our friends at the game of Piquet. So now that we've cleaned up the spilled wine, the blood, looked at some beautiful, beautiful paintings, tallied up the winnings, we can pack away Waterloo for another day. It's been delightful to play cards with you, take some time out, spend some time together. Thank you for playing cards with me in the study today. If you want to play again or some more, there are several card playing videos and several Piquet playing videos here in the study, so you can spend as much time as you like looking at all the pictures on the card decks, making declarations and scoring, just listening to the card sounds and the boxes. yourself. Be kind to others. And be extraordinary.